Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to The Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access for absolutely everybody. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a like if you're watching us on LinkedIn or Facebook. I think if you're watching us on Facebook, you'll struggle. We're having a bit of a connection problem again tonight, but don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and that bell, and you will be informed of absolutely everything that we've got going on. More so, just go to our website, www.thecaringview.co.uk. Go and check out our CQC hub and anything else that we have to offer on there. I did a quick check of our website the other day, bearing in mind Mark and I do this in our free time. We had 25,000 views alone of the website last month. So obviously the resources we are providing are benefiting people. If you watched us last week, we spoke all around AI. And we do have an AI guide in social care coming out, and I'm hoping that will be up by the end of this week. Top tips around AI and what is available for you to use in social care. Now, it is just myself tonight and my fabulous guest, Nicola. But before we get into introductions, before we get into what we are talking about, we've just got a video that we want to play from a recording that happened earlier on today with the Care Workers Charity of an initiative that they've got going on. And if you know us at The Caring View, we are nothing but supporters of everything fabulous in social care. And one of those is the Care Workers Charity. So let me play this video and we will be back with tonight's show.
Hello. So you're getting the me and the Jenny before we go live tonight. So Jenny, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Looking very festive there. I mean, I've just got this beautiful background and you're there in a Christmas hat and a lovely tree there.
Got to get in the festive spirit. My tree's been up for a long time. I am one of those people who puts it up in November. I am sorry, but I do.
Well, if Adam was here, he would be in competition with you because I'm pretty sure his goes up on the 1st of November, so he gets Halloween out of the way and then the decks go up. So I've only just started. So I bought my tree at the weekend, so it's up with lights, but it's not decorated. So it's on my to-do list. Yeah. So we're here today to talk about the Care Workers Charity Christmas Prize Draw. Are you able to just give us a bit more information on that? How did that idea come about? What is it? How can people get involved?
At the Care Workers Charity, we have a whole wealth of amazing sponsors, and although they fundraise for us and they support us financially with donations, a lot of them like to give us prizes, and it's something that we have wanted to do for a long time. And this year we thought this is the time, so this is our first one. And if it goes well, it will be a continual thing. We've got 26 prizes from 26 sponsors. 25. We have donated a prize of ourselves. So 25 sponsors, 26 prizes. And it's very exciting. It's over on Crowdfunder. The link is down here. Thank you, Mark.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, I've shared the link there. I think it's a really good initiative. And yeah, when you sent me the link, I thought, no, I really want to be involved. And I've got my hopes on winning the Fortnum & Mason hamper. I've made that very clear. I don't want the content. So if anybody wins it and they just want the content but don't want the hamper, I'm more than happy to take that off your hands. But are you able to talk us through what some of those prizes are that people can win? Because there are some really good ones. I'm not saying that any of them are bad. There are some really good ones on here. I mean, they're all bloody amazing.
There are some fabulous ones, and actually there's quite a few hampers in there, Mark, so you've got more than one chance at that. Looking for a hamper basket. But yeah, we've got lots of Fortnum & Mason hampers. We've got bottles of Moët champagne. We have a Samsung Galaxy tablet. We have Amazon vouchers. We have Marks & Spencer's vouchers. We have a hotel gift card voucher, so you can go off on a hotel break. We've got picture framing vouchers. We've got a bit of everything in there. Some of the sponsors that have given us those: Bevan Britton, Tomorrow's Guides, Howdens, Five on a Bike, Mansfield Advisors, Social Care TV, Sequoia, I'm not going to miss anyone now, Virgin Money, Care Home Life, Nexus Media Group, Autumna, Finders Keepers Recruitment, Kent Integrated Care Alliance, Access Group Health and Social Care Team, Log My Care, Surewise, Nourish and Care Planner, the CWCA and Person Centred Software, Florence Academy, FCN, Fulcrum, and Conspicuous Marketing. So thank you to all of you amazing sponsors for all those prizes, and good luck to everyone who hopes to win one. I can't enter because I am part of the charity, sadly, but some of those prizes are incredible.
Yeah, no, they are really good. So talk us through the target. What is the target that you've got to raise this year? What are you stretching yourself to?
So we put our target to £2,000 initially, which we have 75% of at this moment, time of recording, which is fantastic, and we're really excited about that. Obviously, if suddenly someone bought tickets and it went up to lots of money, much more than that, would be delighted. But you know, at this time of year, the more money we can fundraise, the more care workers we can help. It is a difficult time of year for everyone, really, but care workers are among those hardest affected at this time of year. They don't get a break because care work never stops. So yeah, we're trying to do our bit. So grab your tickets while you can. Those tickets are only on sale, let me just check before I give you the answer, until the 22nd of December.
Yes, so not long. So I'm on the website at the moment, and the link's down here for anybody that wants to join, and we'll make sure we pop it on our social media channels as well. But you can pay £5 for one entry, £20 gets you 5 entries, and £50 gets you 15 entries. And I think, like Jenny said, actually, prizes aside, it's actually supporting, you know, our frontline care workers. And we obviously know that the charity has supported so many people. And Jenny, just a reminder, just in case there's anybody that might not know about the Care Workers charity, what is the money used for once you've got it kind of in the charity?
Our main use of funds is our grant scheme. We have crisis grants, which care workers can apply to have if they are in situations of crisis, particularly ones that stop them from working. And that could be car repairs, that could be washing machines broken down and they can't wash their uniforms. It can be support with a variety of costs that other people managed to pay, and sometimes care workers struggle on the wages that they receive for the jobs that they do. So yeah, grant schemes are our main use of funding.
Thank you very much. Any final words from you before I tell everybody that they need to go on and make a donation?
Just to let you all know that the prize draw will be drawn by myself on the 23rd, I believe, of December. Winners will be contacted via a Care Workers charity email. We will never message you on Facebook or anything like that. And we will certainly never ask for your bank details. So please beware of scammers at this time of year. But yeah, get your entries in and watch the live draw when it happens. And good luck, everybody.
Yes, good luck, but not for the hamper. Thank you very much, Jenny, for joining me to do this. Good luck, everybody.
I mean, they never fail to amaze about how much work they're doing for the fabulous workforce that is social care. So please do go buy your tickets, go and win some prizes. A huge thank you to all of those sponsors who've donated those prizes. I think it's absolutely fabulous. And what a time to do it, giving at Christmas. It's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm after that hamper as well.
I do love Thornton Mason hamper. I do. So tonight we are talking, how do we talk about sex and intimacy in care? I'm Adam Pennell, your only host of the Caring View tonight. Mark is off whining and dining and schmoozing, but I am joined by a very good friend of mine and regular on the Caring View, both in person at the trade shows and online, Nicola Holmes. Nicola, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for that nice introduction as well. Oh, good.
So, Nicola, for those... Yes. Oh, always good to see you. For those who don't know you, Nicola, just give us a bit of a background about who you are.
So I have worked in social care now for I might give my age away, about 17 years now. So I'm currently working as a consultant. I specialise in turnaround management for care services. I'm independent. I went on my own this year under my company for Every Step Care Consultancy. And I started as a support worker. And learned my craft through experience and working with organisations and those that gave me a chance.
Very exciting. And you are new to the self-employed, creating your own business route. If only the Caring View had a podcast about entrepreneurs and how to get started on your own businesses. Oh, wait, we do. Go and find it on Spotify. Very, very good and full of some fabulous guests. So tonight, how do we talk about sex and intimacy in care? I'm going to say the word one more time because I do feel like we're afraid to say the word sex. But I'm going to say sex. If you're watching this at home, say sex out loud, please. Let's try and break down the stigma of the word sex. It's part of natural life. It's part of everyday life. It's part of not everybody's life if they don't align themselves that way, if they don't identify in having sexual relationships. That's absolutely fine. That's part of people's lives. But sex is sex, and that is what we are going to talk about. So if you're prudish, turn away now, but keep listening because this is probably for you as well. So, Nicola, how do we talk about sex and intimacy in care? Let's get the big one out of the way first. How do we bring this up?
To me, the conversation should start at the beginning, and sometimes people just if you see. As a consultant, my background is, I see the sexuality care plans, and it's all about how a person dresses. And no one has the conversation of, if they were on holiday and went to a hotel room and they wanted to watch something on TV, they can order online, they can watch online, they have access to online. But when they move into care, that subject is not approached. And if you are assessing somebody and at the very beginning to have that conversation with family are there and that maybe they're not want to have that conversation with the family, there's so many different approaches. You can speak to them again later. Do you have a subscription? Do you want to have, and people, because they're meeting you for a first time as well, they've got to build that trust to you. So the conversation might not be appropriate at that beginning. I personally wouldn't open up and talk about my life straight away to somebody that I don't know. So that build of trust has to happen over a period of time. And be bear that in mind. So the answer say, oh, it's not something I want to talk about. It doesn't mean that they're not going to talk about ever. It means that maybe they might find somebody they can have a laugh and a joke with and actually have that conversation later on. And there is certain staff members that residents bond better with and can have these open conversations with. But it's not to ignore the question, not to ignore it. And, and so personally, some people just don't want to talk about it. It's not something they don't want to. And that has to be respected as well, But we're a new generation of coming into care, and we need to make sure that we do feel comfortable having those conversations and how we're going to do that. I have done it in my past. I've done it in other jobs. It's a conversation that some people just don't feel comfortable with, but we need to have those conversations.
We do. And it's, we've got to be careful. Otherwise, when people move into care, and I like to use the term move in rather than are admitted to a care home, because you're moving into a new house. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
We do run the risk of, strip down, let me check your body, let me do a body map, let me take your height, let me do your must, let me do your water load, let me take your obs, let me do baselines, what's your behavior like, blah, 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 blah. And it can be really intimidating and really, really daunting. And the last thing we want to do on that is, and also, do you want to have sex while you live here? It's got to be done in a way that is human, and that's got to be with all our assessments, hasn't it? Whatever we do has to be in the most humane way possible and has to be in the most appropriate way possible. But we're not just talking about sex tonight, we're talking about intimacy as well. So hand-holding, romantic companionships, things that go beyond the realms of friendship. And I think, just going back to what you were saying around new generations coming into care, I think it's more around, so for me, for the new generations coming into care, yes, we are a lot more open. We are a lot more honest about our feelings and our emotions. There are probably people who are currently in care whose opinions, whose desires, whose wishes have been muted because that's the way they've lived their lives. And it's been very hush-hush. I'm very open. I'm very outspoken. It's probably going to get me cancelled one day. I'll await the day. But I'm a sexually active person. I like sex, and I'm not afraid to say that. I like to have sexual encounters with my partner. We enjoy it, and it's very, very good. I'm going to go to Christmas. If I love Christmas and I moved into a care home, and I came downstairs one day and all the Christmas decorations were up and everything was decorated and everything was done. And I didn't know what was going on Christmas Day because it had just been planned by the care home and I had no input into the parties that were going on or what activities we were doing. I'd be very sad because that's something that's really important to me. And I'd love to take part in those Christmas decorations. I'd love to go, this is what's important to me on Christmas Day. I want to see that. So when it comes to other aspects of our life, we've got to be able to be as open about that, and people have to be as respectful as they possibly can be as well. It's just, how do we approach that now? And how do we move away from initially going, oh my gosh, they've got behaviors that present as challenging, let's get some disinhibition training going on, to, do they have capacity? Yeah, they do. We've got to assume they do until we can prove otherwise. If they do, how do we facilitate that? So I'm going to ask you, how do we assess capacity for someone when it comes to sex and relationships and intimacy? What are the things that we should be thinking?
To me personally, because the care is such a wide spectrum. So for me, if you feel the need to question someone's capacity, then that's when we're doing the assessment. And what are we assessing for? If it's a husband and wife relationship, and I feel like that should be treated differently, because simply that relationship's always been there, and that behavior, and sort of behavior, it's a need, and it is. And I think people need to start looking at it's a need that needs addressing, and we need to look at that. So each individual case should be treated individually as well. And if a person's asking and wants that relationship, we should be, just because one of them's maybe moved into a care home, I said, does it need to be? If there's a drive is only from one person and not the other, then obviously that's something different. Then we do have to look at that separately again. So it's not a one-word answer. There's a multiple different things. And I think adults with learning disabilities, especially the younger generation. So for instance, for myself, in the past, I've worked with older adults with learning disabilities who were using inappropriate equipment to pleasure themselves in other way, and infections and stuff. So then, with working with this person and the psychologist who was involved at the time, we're then introduced to a safer way to do that, how to access, but also the cleaning of apparatus. And the same as like taking the pill, the contraception. There's all these different things that we need to go through, and do they understand the implications of that? So assessing the capacity, but also, if there is a young person and family are involved, do they need to know they have the privilege of keeping some information to themselves? So if somebody wishes, and I think families sometimes, there's like an interesting article that come through early on this year, and a family questioned a 30-year-old woman capacity because she was having a sexual relationship. But if I add on that the person had Down syndrome, then all of a sudden it's not an issue anymore, but it shouldn't have been an issue. That person had her capacity and her sex questioned, her sex life talked about to 7 or 8 different people, to go to the court to then get deemed that she had capacity. And then, but she at this point has lost all trust with family, and the care provider said all along they did have capacity. They said they understood the risk, the relationship had long gone, they had finished this relationship, it had already ended, but this person's private life was exposed, and we have to be really mindful of that. Just because we might question it because we don't agree with it, is it our personal opinion, or is it because the capacity of the person, or do they understand the risk? And it is such a wide, it's such a big question, and it can go in so many different questions, different ways, but start with the risk. Let's start with the risk and seeing that, and that's what we need to look at. We need to look at the risk. What is it causing any harm? Are both parties consenting? Right, okay, how can we make sure it stays that way, and make sure that everyone's safe? And that's a priority. It is a big priority.
And it's really interesting that you bring that article up, because you'd sent it me before the show and I've had a read through it. And for me, what's heartbreaking about that is we always think that mediation is probably one of the best tools that we've got when it comes to social care. How do we involve advocates? How do we have this breakdown of families? But to have someone who's quite strong in their convictions, knows what they want, to have their capacity questioned, this is all done on a backdrop of a family breakdown in court, whilst trying to just explore a natural part of life. It's really, really sad. And it's why are we getting to these points and why are we getting to there? I suppose it's also really interesting to, and I will always bring this up until my dying breath, around individualities and different sexual orientations and identifications. And I suppose there's something around asking these questions in a compassionate way as well. So not just, is sex important to you? Is, have sexual and romantic relationships been a part of your life? No, they haven't. Do you want them to be? No, I don't. I'm asexual. It's not something that interests me. And I suppose, touching upon what we spoke about earlier, when we spoke around how desires and wishes might be muted due to social pressures from bygone eras, that also comes down to orientation as well, doesn't it? So, are sexual and romantic relationships an important part of your life? Have they always been? Yes. All right. What do they normally look like? Well, it's usually, me and a woman. Brilliant. Have you ever wanted them to look different? Well, actually, now that you mention it, yeah. And, I did experiment when I was younger, but I couldn't because of society. It's around fostering that sort of atmosphere for people and that nurturing environment so people can be open and honest in what they want to say.
We used to attend a club for adults with learning disability in our local area, and one gentleman lived with his mother, and his mother sadly passed away. The transformation in this young man when he was able to enter care, and that the care provider should be celebrated, because this young man was dyeing his hair. He was really embracing who he was. And so this conservative slack shirt wearing young man, he came out and he was here and he'd arrived. And it was amazing to see that was encouraged by the care provider. And, as identity of who he was, it was amazing. And it's just so sad that had been muted because the generation of where he come from his mother's side, was not looked at. It was frowned upon. But he was able to express himself, and it was a real. And so there is some successful stories that you can see coming through care. And I have seen myself, and that is there, and that needs. Some providers have got it just right. They have got it just perfect, but sometimes this muted. And how many times have we seen it, Adam? We had. I'm sorry, I'm going to refer to another scenario, but I had one and that stayed with me forever. And it was a gentleman who had a special friend. He referred to him as his special friend. And his special friend also went to another care home and he died. He was very poorly. And this gentleman never got over it. But his family were devoted Catholics. And he was brought up a devoted Catholic. And he was so scared of death. He was at the end, he was terrified. We were taking it in turns and holding him in bed because he was so scared. He said, "Don't let me be him alone, definitely," when he wanted to be held. And I said, "Girl, should we get the priest?" He went, "I can't. I've got a secret and I can't have the priest." It still gives me goose pimples up my arms now. And I said, You can have the priest. If you want the priest, you can have the priest. And I said, "I'm telling you now." I said, "He will come." I said, "And we know." I said, "We know." I said, we still love you all the same." He broke down. We got the priest who came, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours, and the team I had for us, man, it was beautiful. The priest come. I told him what the concern was, though he never openly told me. We knew. And this is what, 7, 8 years ago. It's not that long ago at all. And he got that sense of relief on his deathbed. He got that on his deathbed, and that is not fair. It isn't fair that life is like that, and people have been treated in that manner, and it's still out there. So muted, actually, I think, is a massive topic that needs to be discussed a lot more.
So with that then, how can we as providers, be this home care homes, supported living, learning disability homes, specialist care centres, absolutely day centres, anything in relation to social care, what sort of tips can you give us? Because you've got some experience in this, you've had these scenarios, you've got these case studies. What can we do to create environments that respect and support the diverse orientations of individuals, but also the sort of diverse way that people have lived their lives? Because it could be that these people are heterosexual, but have always had polygamous relationships and have never really been monogamous. So what are the ways that we can usher in these environments into our home? What can we think about?
I think it starts with your team. It starts with your team and having and explain to them what diversity is and what we're looking at and what we want our team to be. And these conversations are coming up. So sometimes people have very strong values, but those values need to sort of stay at the door. What their beliefs are when they come to your care team, these are individuals you are working in their home. You are working to support them to make sure what their care looks like is what they want it to look like. And that goes for this goes for the sex as well. It goes for their needs for sexuality as well. And that needs to be in the team. The team has to be educated. And then that education within that team and that openness within the team will then open up those conversations with your residents if they need to happen and if they're going to happen. And people bond separately with different people. They will see things that are different. And I think having that first, because we can't have somebody, even though we all knew going back, we all knew about this gentleman, we already worked, we knew who the special friend was, make sure the photos were there. But did anyone actually strike up a conversation with them and go, "Are you gay? Is this, do you want to talk about that?" And we never did, because he always spoke in riddles, and we kind of felt like we respected that. But in actual fact, I shouldn't have done, and maybe I should have had that conversation with them, and it shouldn't have been at the end. So, and that was like a massive lesson learned for me, that these conversations need to take back early on, because I didn't want to be in that situation and didn't want anyone to feel. It must have felt trapped. They must have felt trapped. And I don't want that to happen to anybody else. So in having those conversations, opening those conversation doors, in some respects, it's like, TV shows, there's programs, there's all sorts of things that can link conversations up, but to start having those conversations with people. But it starts with your team and that educational piece they're able to. For instance, we had a gentleman who had behavioural issues. It turned out it was need. So with that, we had a conversation with him, and I said, some staff members, he got along better with him. And I said, right, I need to have this conversation with him. And this one staff member, she had this really great relationship. I'll have that. She went to him, right, do you want access to porn? And he started laughing. He'd had a stroke and he started laughing. He tapped his hand on the table, but finally. So, and we did. So what would you like? What do we kind of look like? Do you want to go shopping for it? What do you want to do? So the internet and stuff wasn't for him. That's not something he had access to. He watched videotapes and magazines at the top shelf. That's why there was a certain brand, a certain thing. And we got all of that. Because of his physical disability, he couldn't, when he had time to himself, there wasn't a way to manage that. So we said, right, so when you're having that time, we knock on the door. I said, we're coming, how are we going to know what to disturb you? So he said, well, I'll have a red light in my bedroom. So he had a red light next to his bedroom, and he switched that on, and we saw that red glow. We knew to step away from that door, and we will come back later on. And then the risk assessment to go along with that was like he had a bin, it was all clean and stuff. We make sure we're in full PPE. So the other side of that was, good, and those behaviours that were being displayed disappeared. Now we understand that doesn't happen for everybody, especially on the dementia journey. That can't happen sometimes. But at the beginning stages, we can find out what that need is, support that, and where they're verbalising us, then we can set it up so then that need maybe not be displayed in the corridors, and maintaining that person's dignity. And I think maybe if we share our ideas with like conversations like yourselves, but like more providers start coming forward, actually, we've tried this, we've done that, and these tips and stuff will really benefit people coming into care.
Yeah, I mean, really great examples there, Nicola. And, I smiled then, because I was going to say, if you didn't say it, I was going to say, what a really great way to express the lessons learned as well. Because so many people in social care are afraid of getting things wrong. And in fact, they're more afraid of admitting they've got things wrong than getting something wrong. So to be able to sit there and go, actually, we did a really good job, but I could have done better. I just think it's a real testament to yourself and your journey in social care. I think, you are the pinnacle of what people should be aspiring to be when admitting their own mistakes and learning and growing from it. And obviously you have, and it's great to see.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the subject to be discussed, to be honest, because I don't want anyone else to go through that scenario. And, 7 years ago, the topic again was sort of brushed down a little bit, and people weren't really talking about it as much. And then they're probably being a bit open, a bit more open to people to have these conversations. and again, sometimes it's picking your time. It's that, people are not going to be open straight away, and it's building those relationships. Just because they say no at the start, don't ignore it. Go back, ask the question.
So this is great. This is great for people with capacity, and it's great for people who can talk about their needs and talk about their wishes and desires. How do we approach these discussions and conversations and support plans and support needs for people who have got cognitive impairment? So we've done the mental capacity assessment, and actually we know this person's got a cognitive impairment, be that from, I don't know, a dementia, from a brain injury or something. How do we start those conversations with them, and what are the things we need to be looking at? Because we need to approach that differently, but obviously they still have a right to life needs. What should we be doing there?
Again, for me, it's individual. Like you said, it's completely individual. If the beginning conversations have happened when the person did have or be able to verbalise it, that will carry on through the care plan. That would have carried on. If they displays a behaviour because they haven't felt comfortable, and maybe sometimes they're so far along in the dementia journey that when they've actually arrived in the home, they're not able to tell us, but then there can be periods of frustration. I found that sometimes when they're clearing out, if they're the last person in the home, so like maybe the wife or husband, whether has passed away, I've always said, if there's anything private that you find in the bedroom, can you just bring it into the home? And sort of indicate to the family what I'm looking for and what there is. Because sometimes those little bits of information that somebody has or maybe might bring in, we might be able to give us a better idea of what we're looking for. And again, I think families are a bit more accepting of those conversations, later on. I'm aware of a friend of mine whose dad, had to let the noise. He was deaf, didn't put his hearing aid in, and he had it on during the daytime, full blast, and windows open. So there was some noise complaints. So she was fully aware, and she was like, well, that's a need that when he goes in, that's something that he watches. We need to make sure those tapes go in. So that people of our generation now are a bit like, okay, let's have these conversations. But again, that need from the beginning. And when they do lack capacity, it's not just a bucket, the lack capacity. There's going to be certain different times. The behaviours are going to be displayed, and there is ways to pick things up. So if it's during the afternoon, the behaviours start displaying, okay, let's direct them to the bedroom because they also have a duty to maintain that dignity, and people are entitled to that private time. And that needs to be, if we can do it, back into the bedroom in dignity. But obviously, when we've got two residents who lack capacity and have the same need, we also have to safeguard everybody as well. Because sometimes, people think they're younger and other people, their wives or husbands or partners, we've got to be mindful of that and to keep in. But it can be managed if those conversations and behaviours do indicate that something isn't quite right.
Yeah. Oh, no, totally. Exactly. And we spoke about this at... it was the care show this year, wasn't it? And we had a really good conversation around this. And a lot of people asked around the whole risk assessment side of things. And I suppose it comes down... So my stance on this is, how do you risk assess if someone can go out of the care home on their own and go shopping? Well, okay, we do it this way and we do this and we look for this and we look for that. It's exactly the same process. You're just talking about sex. And I think when it comes down to behaviours, such and such has got behaviours that present as challenging. Or if I want to use the term that is archaic, but everyone still uses, they've got challenging behaviour. It's sort of a case of, well, they've got challenging behaviour, let's just accept it. And it's like, well, no, what are the antecedents? What has led up to this person having this episode of behaviour that's presenting as challenging to us? And what's caused it? What's triggered it? Have we done something? Have they asked for something and we've walked past them and ignored them? And has that brought it on? Is the room too hot? Have they not got what they want to close to them? Is that what has triggered this episode? And I suppose when it comes to sex and intimacy, we have to look at the triggers around that as well. So they're displaying a sexual behaviour. Oh my God, they've got this behaviour. We need to manage it. I go back to a scenario that I experienced quite early on in my social care career, and there was a gentleman who every single time we took him for a bath would self-pleasure because that's what he wanted to do when he was in the bath. And everyone was going, oh God, it's gross. It's not right. He shouldn't be doing it. So the first thing I asked was, so what sort of incontinence product is he wearing? And he was wearing one of those, those incontinence products that go around and they strap on and they stick down. And not the Velcro ones either, the sticky ones with the adhesive sticks. And if you take that sticky bit off, it can't stay on, and it's really difficult. You can't get your hands down in there, and it's a nightmare. What we discovered, actually, the only time he has access to his genitals was when he was having a bath, because he didn't have a pad on. And that was the only time he actually got access to it. So it was a case of, well, can we have this question then? Can we look at a scenario and go, right, is there a way that we can support him to have a period of time every day, if he wants to, and we'll look for triggers to see if that's something he's interested in, to allow him to have that time to himself? Because we understand that he's got this need. He wants to be able to do this, and we understand what's restricting him from being able to do so. So the least restrictive option we have is encouraging him and supporting him to be able to have that need and to address that need in a way that's dignified and supported. And it's around noticing the triggers that are coming up. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Around self-pleasuring, before we move on to, sorry, you're going to...
I was going to say, because the amount of times where, people might have their hands down the pants, and there's a new generation of carers and, people a bit more open-minded. Well, how many times don't put your hands in there. Don't put your hands in there. Don't put your hands in there. And how many times will somebody get told, don't put your hands there or don't touch that before the actual behaviours escalate? And how many times will that not be documented and people don't understand where this behaviour's come from? And that's like the really good point you've made there, because that's made me think of, actually, get your hands out, or don't put your hands in there, go and wash your hands. And that sort of like, so you think as a young, we've got youngsters, like, get your hands out your pants. Why you put your hands? They're constantly being told as kids, get your hands out, get your hands out. And then all of a sudden, as an adult, as an older person, you're going to be told exactly the same thing, but now you physically can actually, so the reaction you probably had as a child, you're going to actually have as an adult, and and cause them. It's like, oh, lorazepam, let's get the mental health. Actually, these little behaviours of where people are being stopped might sound really simple, little tiny things, but if everyone's been told, and there's 15 staff members on, that's 15 times a day potentially that person's been told stop. And actually, no one's actually looking at the bigger picture when the behaviour escalates to a certain level because of pure frustration.
Yeah,
so
no, it is. It's honestly, and it makes you think about everything. It makes you reevaluate everything about someone's life. But this is around all behaviours. It makes you start to think, well, actually, if I had to just spend an extra 5 minutes there, would that person's behaviour have been different afterwards? Yes, we need to take into account things like trauma-informed care. We need to understand more about the past, what they've gone through in their lives. Have they been victims in the past? Have they had bad relationships in the past? It's all that stuff that we need to be considering. So we've discussed how we have those conversations. We've discussed consent, and we've discussed how we approach this for people with cognitive impairments. Let's hit a CQC tick box here, and let's talk around accessible information. So how... let's say I'm a CQC inspector, or let's say I'm someone, and I ask, how is information about sexual health made accessible to individuals with different communication needs? And let's throw in sensory impairments and learning disabilities. What sort of stuff should we be thinking around making this information accessible? What sort of tips can you give us? And is there any resources out there that you know of that you can direct us to?
So mostly the local authorities have some excellent, the learning disability team do have, and they've come on leaps and bounds over the coming years. So the psychologist I was referring to actually had a box full of vibrators in her office that we went in to go and have a look. There's information out there for that are easy to read and explaining actually the feelings that they are feeling are actually normal, and they're not having to be afraid of, and actually they are a need. So there's loads of resources out there with on the NHS, and local authorities and the local NHS also have these really good easy read guides. And I can't think off the top of my head which ones I found the best, but there is a lot out there for you to be able to access. There's also if some people are religious and they all come from a religious family, there also are really good videos out there as well from I was trying to think now which one I saw recently, but there's loads of little videos out there for religious needs as well, so they can accommodate what needs to, if the people are, because there is religious beliefs out there and people are quite firm of how after that act is done, what needs to be done afterwards, and people want to follow that as well. So there's information out there as well for them. So there is, and for regards to accessible information, is make sure that needs being met. So you've got your videos, you've got your, your visual prints, but you've also got a demonstration as well. So I'd recommended when I was fortunate enough to have a really, really good, this is like maybe 11 years ago, a really good psychologist who was working with learning disabilities, and she was like, her child was also had, and she said, no, we want this. This is like how it's going to be. Really informative, spoke about UTIs, the infection risk, about cleaning the apparatus, what's also involved, regular smear tests, and explained all this. Now, this person had refused multiple smear tests, but once you got all this information, it was like, I'm going for a smear test. I'm going to go for this. So it's that. So it's make sure not overwhelming somebody either. So let's start off with a big bunch of leaflets. Let's start with, right, okay, so we've got all these, which bit interests you the most? So they get the one that interests them the most. Then we go to the second, we plan it out and have a one-to-one session in an environment where they feel comfortable, or an opportunity to read the information and then come back to ask questions. Again, when this person in the individual I was working with, we used to wait till the night shift, so we used to do sleep. So she'd wait till I was on the sleep, so everyone had gone to bed, and at 10 o'clock she'll come, and say, she'd come knock on the door, say, can we have a cup of tea? And I knew that meant we were going to have a conversation about the information she had. And I was always mindful of, I wasn't qualified in maybe in some areas to answer all this person's questions, probably more, a bit more now, because I'm a bit more, learned, a bit more older in the tooth than I was then. But, if you don't know the answer, say, actually, I don't know that. Should we find out together and figure it out together? But it's being mindful of the information is relevant to that individual, but there's so much. I know NHS are under and services are stretched at the moment, but there is information out there. But it'd be down to yourself, I would say, on that person's needs of how they're going to access it. And if it isn't out there, I'm working currently in Scotland, and some information was not available for one of our relatives, family members. So they've actually had a sensory team who we've now contacted, and they are now making the documents that we needed for this to help support this relative is now being converted. So if you can't find it, ask, because you can't. There is there.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. And if not, create something. Be a leader, be an innovator. There's stuff out there that you can create yourself. So really great tips around how we get this information to our residents, our clients, customers, service users, whatever term we want to use, to the people we're supporting at the end of the day. What about our team? Because this is all really well and good, and we want to promote real sort of independent lives and encourage and support sexuality and intimacy. I can hear the team now going, this isn't part of what I signed up for. I'm not really sure what's going on here. So what sort of information do we need to be providing the team?
So for me, I'll give you some of the experience of the gentleman with the red light. When I was interviewing people, because I see where we were turning, I needed to make sure that people were interviewed were open-minded and said, look, we have this scenario in our home. How do you feel about that? And, and the staff member that I interviewed was like, absolutely not. Oh, no. Well, is that even allowed? That's what some of the responses I got. So then I knew from that beginning point, that's not going to be they're not going to be well fit for our service. That's not what we're looking for. And the person we did have come into our service, though, didn't believe it was true what I said. So, and with the staffing team, because the staffing team were on board, I spoke about this need, and these behaviours that we've been displaying had massively decreased. They could see the impact. Actually, this is actually working. The environment was better. We weren't in a situation where other residents going to be at risk. Because this is where the behaviours were potentially leading to, and everything died down. We did whistleblow on myself, and we had Health Watch come and do a visit, and the whistleblower against them. So there was an investigation, a care plan, everything got sent through, everything else. And I actually said, look, this person lacks capacity in certain areas, but he's actually got full capacity on this, and he doesn't want to share this information. So you're happy to come and speak to him, but you actually just want this to be shared, because one of the questions you used to ask, are you happy for this information to be shared? And he didn't want this to be shared, so it didn't get shared. So they did come out and speak to him. But the thing is, there's education of the staffing team, even though I felt I'd done everything, I educated them, everyone could see the difference, that that staff member still felt what I was doing was wrong, or what I was allowed to, like, how can you allow that to happen? Hey, what do you mean allow? This is their home. But, this is the private time. How could I allow this to happen? And it was that mentality. And I think that's when we started off the conversation, as to staff members' beliefs and what their values and opinions are important. But when it comes to someone's care and how they want it to be delivered and this need, those conversations really need to take place at the very beginning. And sometimes people just not accepting of it and just believe it to be wrong. And it is a hard one. And sometimes you can have these conversations, but until it actually happens in your service, you're not really going to really know.
No, you're not.
No.
And that's true. And it doesn't really show up in mandatory training. It doesn't really show up in desirable training. And there isn't really a guy out there to go, you're getting into social care, and this is some of the stuff that you're going to expect. Let's think training quickly. What sort of training is out there? Do you know of any training out there for people in regards to sex and sexuality in care? If not, what can we be doing to train our teams?
Age of Concern used to do sexuality and diversity. They used to run, but I don't think that exists anymore. I think again, it's down to your funding pots or when your local authorities are. Again, some organisations, but it's all local authority based, where an issue's come up and it depends on the funding pots of what they've got. But at the moment, personally, for training specifically in this need and addressing it, I only tend to see in sort of specialist mental health units when they're actually, it's not actually widespread for us, you know, residential care homes, nursing homes and supported living. It kind of topic of sex tends to keen to come up more in teaching of safe sex to you if they're younger people, but rather that sort of sessions with not actually the care provider itself. So in regards to training, I think there's definitely a gap in the market for somebody to actually come forward to do a good piece of work and the impact on it.
So yes, no, definitely. And I think there is more to be done out there. There are some resources through Skills for Care that people can access if you want to. And I'll try and post. I'm on my own without Mark. So I'm trying to do all the tech and everything all on my own. And if you know me, I'm not very good at multitasking. So I will try and get some links out there. Enhance UK. Or Enhance the UK, I'm sorry, also have a course around sexuality, sexual expression, and relationships. It's pricey. I think it's around £1,400 for that training course. But it's one of those where if you send your manager and they get all that information and knowledge, you can then cascade that back to your team meetings, team huddles, do your own training session. You know, there's loads out there that we could potentially look at using. Brilliant. Nicola has just shared me a link from Alzheimer's.org around care home, sex and intimacy, and I will make sure that goes into the comments as well. But I must make sure I ask another question first, so there is no dead space in what goes on this evening. So we've spoken around quite a bit so far, and I want to come back to confidentiality and privacy. And really great example that you gave around that person's bedroom with the red light. How do we make sure that confidentiality is maintained when we're discussing these topics? And I want to lean probably more into the care planning side of things, because people don't need their entire life bit by bit documented in a care plan. We don't need to put in their Cardex notes. Oh my gosh, really show them Cardex notes. I mean, how old are they? In their sort of care notes, their social care notes, such and such had a really good day today. Oh, by the way, they also self-pleasured in their bedroom, or they have sex with. What do we need to be documenting, and how do we maintain that confidentiality?
So we for us, we used to always put it was you know, that had some alone time in the bedroom, and literally that's all left it is. We did have you know, inappropriate wording of where staff members maybe all putting different comments down of like, went into the bedroom, they were doing this. We didn't need to do that. We're having time alone. Like literally that said, like, we don't need that broadcasting. We already know he has that time alone. You went and knocked on the bedroom door, you saw the red light, and you didn't need to go. Actually, the red light was on. You didn't actually need to go in and have a look. You didn't know that was actually happening. You probably just had a nap now. You don't know. And I think it's being that mindful of like, read that documentation. You've knocked on the door, you saw the red light, it didn't go any further. If you went back half an hour later and the red light was still on, you're thinking, actually, that's a bit too long. If something happened of the ill, you know, then, you know, we could go in further, you know, that's fine. But I think being mindful of the terminology, and also, while somebody has, you know, well, you have got the capacity and they have got the care, you know, up in where I am in Scotland, you just get a certificate saying you lack capacity, and that's it. There's no individual mental capacity assessments. It doesn't exist. Mental capacity sort of up this way. It's a different ball game altogether. But a person in, can have capacity in different areas and can choose. And there's some things that, they don't want the family to know, and that has to be respected. And as the care progresses and as the journey progresses, certain elements of care planning might not be needed anymore, and only a reference needs to be put to it. So that care plan can be archived and doesn't need to be shared. But also, who do we need? Who's looking at it? Like, same as GDPR, you're always looking at, why does that person need to know that information? Why is it important? And ask that question exactly the same. Why is that question needed? Is it, do they need access to that? Why? And there's some things, if my mum and dad are in care, there's some areas, and this is one of them, that I probably don't want to know about. If I discover something, there's yours to have those conversations with them. I don't really want to know those conversations, and that's okay. And families can be that, but then you're going to have maybe younger people in care where the parents are being heavily involved in the care from the very, very beginning, and they can't understand how this can be allowed. And that's going to be just putting those families in the right direction where they can get support as well, and the education as well, because it does happen, and it's a team effort for everybody. Makes life easier. Everyone's on the same page.
Definitely. Now, I'm going to have to issue a huge apology, because this isn't me. I'm not messing up. I'm checking the comments that are coming through. And unfortunately, LinkedIn isn't pulling our comments through tonight. So I've just popped onto LinkedIn to make sure that there are people there. And there definitely are people there. And we are having comments come through. And a colleague of mine that I've done some work with in the past, Esther Weiskirk, has been in the comments, and I just want to I can't bring them up on the screen, so I'm going to read them out. So apologies for me looking away. And Esther said that it's great that this subject is raised, and she agrees that simply having this conversation is a great start. With regards to dementia, it's all about having capacity to consent. Consent is the difference between having a good time or doing time. I love that saying, having a good time or doing time. That, Esther, we are both stealing that, so thank you so much for that. Esther's also come back up and said, I run training on this topic. So I've posted a link in the chat, in the comments, around Symbiosia, which is Esther's company. And it's a community interest, do really, really great work. And yes, go check them out. If the trainings that they offer will support you, go and have a look. I'll bring their website up on the screen as well, so you can see that. Nicola, I think there were really great comments then around the care planning side of things. And I think it's really important that we approach it in the ways that you've said. We've had Tina come in as well saying, now, Tina, I apologize because I've only just seen this comment. So it starts with, on the point just raised, I don't know what that point is. So if you are still watching, Tina, please come back and direct us to what the point was. But she said, just raised is a very good case, which is being reported in the same sector that you're referring to, where a young person living with life-limiting learning disability, who's able to have sexual needs met without parents, with the support of staff. And there's a lot of this going on. I think there's more conversations out there that are happening now. And I think, I'm not saying this episode tonight is going to change the world. I think people don't switch on if it's something they're uncomfortable about. But I think starting these conversations now is an important one, to be able to start really changing the mindsets of what it is around social care. I have put the links in from Skills for Care as well, and they've got some really great resources. So they've got, in fact, the link that I provided you has the lesson plan slides and facilitators guide. So it's a one-stop shop to provide your own training. You can use this to do your own training. The resources they've got is a relationships and sexuality awareness training program, and they've got the facilitators guide. They've got the lessons plan there for you, and they've also got the slides. There's also a ton of handouts and worksheets there. So roles and regulations in the law, sexual safety and autonomy, practical approaches to relationships and sexual support, understanding sexuality and relationships, barriers, benefits, and the impact of staff values. And I think all of that's really, really important. So if you are struggling, let's say your purse strings are a little tight at the moment and you're all bracing yourself for £11.44 an hour next April, and you're thinking, crikey, really need to concentrate where we put our funds, go and have a look at that Skills for Care stuff. Because if you can provide it free and understand it yourself and provide and deliver it in a way that is effective, I think that's a really, really, really good resource. Yes, Nicola, I'm also going to share in the comments now a resource from MenCap. So go and check that out as well, if I can figure out how to do that, but I'm running out of steam and I'm getting lost with how many tabs I've got open and what I am sharing. Let's talk boring stuff for a quick second because it's something we all need to do. Policies. We have to probably have something written down, procedures written somewhere, covering our own backs. Where should we put this in our policies? Should it be its own policy? Should it be in safe care and treatment? What do you think, Nicola? And what sort? I mean, to be fair, this is probably something that's going to transcend multiple policies, isn't it? So where would you expect to see this in a policy or policies?
I'd expect it in care planning and under person-centred care planning. I'd need it in there. We need to see how it's going to be delivered and how it's safely going to do, because it will lead to, obviously, environmental risk assessment, infection control. It's going to lead down to different avenues. And to be fair, you've already got bodily fluids covered anyway. So all you're doing is adding an extra tab. And each one is going to be individual. So each care plan, each thing, it might get a bit different, if you're going to a different extreme of bringing people in, that's, we need to be looking at that. But in its insurance as well. So there's other bits and pieces that you need to be looking at where the act, if there's couples and where the act is. So it does cover quite a lot. It could be put it down, follow. If you use QCS or you're using, any other sort of like policy provider, go and speak to them where would they want to put it and where does it slot in and is it being covered? If you write your own policies, think about care planning and then start with each risk area. So educational bit, who you're going to have involved, are you going to have people involved? Do you need people involved? Because the more people are going to be involved in this one decision, that person is they going to lose trust? Are they going to be able to speak openly again? And we go back to that first case at the beginning where there's 18 people talking to one individual about their sex life, and do people want that? So it's being mindful of where that needs to be, and is it, once it's risk assessed, we'll be fine. It's fine. And it's renewed on a regular basis.
You've
done it again.
I've done the entire show, which I think has been pretty much flawless. Mark, when you're watching this back, because he does watch them back, I'm sorry for messing up right at the last hurdle with a mute. I know. Yeah, no, really, really great. And I suppose the other ones that go without saying, making sure it's in our safeguarding policy, mental capacity policy, these sort of things that we'll be looking at, or even just referencing those policies within other policies. So let's think we're talking about the care planning policy. Please see mental capacity and DOL's policy around gaining consent and what have you. So we can reference and pull them across.
It could be in to be honest, it can fit in so many different categories because it has an impact in so many different ways. But it's going back. If you make your own, make sure to start with like you said, go through everything and just start from the beginning of how the conversation starts. And it just start with consent.
Brilliant. Oh, Nicola, we're almost at an hour, which I find utterly bizarre. The time flies when you're having fun and having educational discussions. And I think tonight's been a really, really great show. And, we did originally have a number of guests lined up for this. And unfortunately, life gets in the way, and we're fine with that at the Care Review. Life gets in the way, and we just, hope everyone is okay and that everything's fine. But I've enjoyed this, pardon the pun, intimate conversation. I think it's been lovely. I think it's been really, really good. So some top tips before you disappear for providers. And there's something that we haven't spoken about, which maybe we should just touch on quickly, actually. And I know we're short on time, but what do we do as providers when Joan holds Ahmed's hand? And Joan and Ahmed have a really strong relationship growing. They've both got dementia, but actually they like holding hands with each other every single day. But the families don't understand and they don't get it, and the team think that they need to stop it. What should our approach be in those situations? Because this is the smallest amount of intimacy now, isn't it? This is like low level intimacy, but can cause huge problems.
It can.
What do we do?
To me, they're finding comfort from each other. So to me personally, I'd have an insight, what was it about it you don't like? And speak to the families about it. Because at the moment, there's no harm being done. They're finding comfort in each other's company, and that level of hand holding, they're having a level of comfort. So it's not a safeguarding, it's not a concern. The safeguarding would be, for me, is separating two people who actually having a connection, who are holding hands, and you're causing that emotional distress to somebody unnecessarily when no harm's coming. And I think it has happened, you know, you've had this conversation before, I've had this conversation before, and it's educating the family, I don't like it, like, you know, my dad's not here anymore, and I feel like, and so actually then you need to start exploring the feelings of that relative. Why do they feel this way? And actually what this actual concept means. It doesn't mean the dad's being replaced, doesn't mean that the mother's being replaced. What it means is that they're looking for that you know, that comfort from somebody and that security from someone, and they found it here. And, you know, and it's exploring that. And sometimes family need maybe a little bit more support and pointing in the right direction of where they can get that level of support from. And it's looking at that. So to me, something so simple, you know, it can have a massive impact. And teams, you know, shouldn't be separating people in that manner, because there is going to be emotional distress to those residents.
No, spot on. Going to throw a curveball, and I think that's a baseball reference. I don't really know. I'm not very sporty. I don't get sports at all. But I'm going to throw you a curveball. What if Joan's husband's still alive, and he visits, and Joan just wants to sit holding Ahmed's hand and shows no interest in her husband anymore? What's the situation there?
It's sad. It's part of it's not sad. We're caring for Joan. And it's awful. It's not nice for the husband. And so when we know the visit's coming, we could try and make sure that, you know, they were just separating for that hour. They have that time to themselves so they can have that cup of tea and a biscuit. We used to do, like, you know, little bits and pieces so people could be, you know, by themselves and have like family meals and things like that together. And I think that's really important. Then we could try and do that to lessen the distress. But I wouldn't stop it. Again, I wouldn't stop that completely. It's only an hour to try and get that time together. Because you can understand when families do come and visit, sometimes residents, if they have on their dementia journey, they can be quite, you know, there's times a day where people are quite distracted and things are going on and they're not recognising why family are there. So I used to set up games and, you know, different things, board games, colouring in and stuff. So it was an activity for everybody to get involved with when families were coming to visit. That's important. So it's just doing something normal. That even the children and grandkids everyone can enjoy in. So I would try that, but I'd maintain exactly the same thing, and I'll be, you know, I'll probably more than likely refer them to counselling as well, the family member. It's like, no, this is upsetting, and you know, we want to support you, and but she's finding comfort in this manner, you know, and there's nothing else, you know, the intimacy, they're finding this, we can try and do this, but we won't be stopping them, separating them. And the same response, but we do, the thing is, we do have to communicate with families, and sometimes these things do happen. I think there's a Grey's Anatomy program, a session on this. A bit to
well, isn't like 400 series of Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah, there's like a Grey's Anatomy thing. I think it's like, it's to the extreme. I don't think the lady had dementia, but the claim she did in the show. But, you know, it's having those, and for family, and sometimes some of the complaints from families and the frustrations from families, because they've not had conversations and they don't understand what's happening, and they feel like they're having tablets, they're having this, they should be back to normal, they should be able to do this, should, and actually it's not, and they're grieving a loss of a person every single day. And that support, and again, it goes down to communication, educating. If they say, I don't want her holding a hand, we can't stop that from happening. We can't forcibly stop somebody if there's no injury and they're having comfort, because, you know, it has other effects. That's the way I see it.
No, I think honestly, it's spot on. And like I say, go and utilize some of the training that is out there. Put yourself a program together. Big shout out to advocacy services. There's loads out there. You can always get in touch with advocacy services and get their support. You could also use Nicola's support. Nicola, before we disappear, give yourself a plug. How do people utilize Every Step Care Consultancy?
So I find that I do have a Facebook page, but I don't use it. I'm terrible on social media. I'm not on it enough. I'm terrible. I will get better, or I'm going to hire somebody to make me better. So you can contact me on my Facebook page, or I'm on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that we can, in fact, whilst we close out the show, I will pop your LinkedIn profile into the comments so that people can, if you're okay with that, so that people can connect with you if they want to. And finally, one last top tip. So people are watching this going, actually, crumbs, we need to do a bit more now around sexuality and care and supporting people. What's your number one top tip for anyone watching this who's going to go into work tomorrow and go, right, we're changing how we do things? What's your big one top tip to get started?
Training. start with your training. You can't go win and change and say, I want everyone to run this one. We need to make sure the culture and training is changed, and then the conversations can happen. But that's not done first. No one's going to be comfortable having any conversations.
Simple.
Yeah.
Simple. Training. Let's start getting that training going. I can't believe it. Right at the end of the show, we get a comment pulled in from LinkedIn. What better comment? Thanks both for such an interesting discussion. No, you're most welcome. Anyone who wants to discuss anything on the Caring for You, please do get in touch. Next year's already booking up, which is really, really scary. So we've got 2 shows left of this year now. I don't know. Mark is the planning maestro of the Caring View. Do tune in next week. I do know we have got a show next week, and I want to say it's around succession planning. I might also be lying. I'm a fibber. But there's definitely going to be a great show on next week. We may have one final one before we break for the Christmas period. And then Mark and I are going to take a bit of a break, and we will be back in the new year with Series 4 of The Caring View. Really, really excited. Go to www.thecaringview.co.uk to find out absolutely everything about us. You can get all of our guides, all of our resources, all of our episodes and podcasts and supply lists and everything that is on there. Nicola, give me a shout after this. Send me a link to your Facebook page and your details and your phone numbers. We'll get you on our supply list as well. You're a huge contributor to the Caring View, and we're always about giving back. So totally no cost on the supply list for you. Let's get you on there so people can use your services as well. Most importantly, though, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Nicola.
No, thank you for inviting me.
You're most welcome. So until then, we will see you next week, where we may or may not be discussing succession planning, and I will wait to get told off by Mark later on this evening. Take care.
Bye.